So, Mr. Gerald Brisco, I wanted to thank you once again for taking the time to do this interview. I greatly appreciate it. You are definitely not just a legend in the Florida and Southern territories, but really just across the whole wrestling industry. So it's very kind of you to do this.
Well, thank you. I always like sharing history of our business.
And you definitely have plenty. So I guess we'll kind of start off around when you debuted. So is it true that you started training to become a wrestler kind of in 1967 with your brother?
Yeah, you said 67, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah. I started training, Jack had started right after he won the national championships in 1965. He won the national championship in March, and by May he had his first TV match, and so during spring breaks and summertime and everything, Jack and I were real close, and so I would travel with Jack. I'd make all these loops, and before you knew it, there was a job opening for a ring truck driver and somebody to drive the truck and set up the ring, set up the arena, and set up the box office. These were like little summer spot shows we'd run in baseball parks and little out-of-the-way cities and stuff like that, and little bitty armories and everything. So I got that job, so I actually started going, and of course, a lot of times I'd set the ring up early and some of the guys would be there, or some of the talent would be there, and they'd get in the ring with me and start rolling around. And that's basically, I didn't go to any school to learn how to be a pro wrestler. I was a wrestler from college and everything. So I was a wrestler, but all I had to do was learn the entertainment part of it, and that came pretty easy once I figured out what the business was.
Right. You mentioned, too, that Jack had experience doing amateur wrestling before becoming a pro wrestler, and while researching for this interview, I saw how accomplished he was, and supposedly didn't get taken down once his entire senior campaign. That's incredibly impressive. But you also got into amateur wrestling as well, and won some tournaments of your own, and were also very active in sports and stuff, and especially football. How much did doing all those sports, and especially the amateur wrestling experience, kind of help you really transition into the pro wrestling industry?
Well, I always thought, having the knowledge, and I tell these guys I recruit now, you have a special skill that very few people have. You know how to wrestle. People used to ask me what was my gimmick. Back in the old days, everybody had a gimmick. Blonde hair,
Adrian Adonis,
whatever. Yeah, I mean, they were gimmicks. And I said, my gimmick is I'm a wrestler. No, I know you're a wrestler, but what's your gimmick? I said, that's it. I'm a wrestler. I know how to wrestle. I started wrestling since I was 8 years old. So I've been around it all my life. So I was a wrestler, and that's what Jack and I used to. We're wrestlers. It don't matter if you're professional or amateur. You're a wrestler if you're wrestling at school. And so that was my gimmick, and I always thought it was an advantage because I knew how to get into hold. I knew how to get out of hold. I knew body positioning. And amateur wrestling, the big thing is body positioning, reading moves, anticipating moves and stuff like that. So I felt the knowledge of my school wrestling and all my background in the shoot style of wrestling. It helped me develop in the pro because I could anticipate moves. I could see them coming. I could feel the body motion, which way the body was going and which way I needed to take it. I wasn't a big guy. My brother wasn't a big guy. So you had to know this stuff to help with leverage and help with the physics of the body, of slamming the body around. And then controlling, you wrestling, you weigh 220 pounds or 215 pounds. You're a wrestling guy like Joe Luke, 330 pounds. You better know how to move that weight around, or you're gonna get eat up.
Oh, definitely. And not only does it help you in the moment, but it really helps you. It really helps you make things look real and that much more snug when you are in the ring. Some of the greatest workers of all time have amateur wrestling experience, but more recently, I mean, it's clearly like Brock Lesnar and Kurt Angle, and now Bobby Lashley's just won the WWE title not too long ago, and they all had very prolific wrestling experience, but I think a lot of what you guys accomplish just as time moves on is kind of overlooked, just how important you all were in really inspiring that technical style. But it's very interesting. How was it getting to team with your brother and having all the success? Because you really kind of caught fire to the entire southern half of the country and really just shook the industry. So how was that, and how was it getting to share those experiences with your brother?
Well, it was really cool. It really was. Jack and I set out, like I said, he trained me. He basically trained me in his dining room, of his house before I had my first match. I was, going through a hold and stuff like that, and moves and everything. So, and like I said, I'd driven a ring truck and set up the rings and, the box office and all that stuff for Leroy McGurk, who started us both. So, Jack and I, when we started out, we both had gold, and they were similar. We wanted to be the best, but we were those two kids. When we didn't travel together much because he was older than me, and he was basically gone out of Oklahoma by the time I started in pro wrestling. So he was down in Texas. So we'd heard from a lot of guys, that the South really likes a lot of wrestling, likes good solid wrestling. You guys would be good. So Jack and I, before we both set off, we kind of made an agreement. Hey, we'll be single wrestlers. Let's go accomplish both of our goals. Let's go do what you want to do, and I'll go do what I want to do. And he said, we said, we've made a plan, later on in our career, after we accomplish a few things, we could be a tag team and team up and then have a fresh start and, go around. So, but let's don't go to the same place. Let's go to two different places. You go down to Jackson, I'll go down to Florida, where, I can go down there and get over real strong. And then if I need a tag team partner, I can bring you in. But you go somewhere close, and the Carolinas was the best option at that time. You go to the Carolinas and you get over up there, and we could do the same thing. So we kind of devised a plan where, we'd work in different places, and then, of course, the Funk Brothers came along at that time.
Right.
Aaron Brisco and the Funk Brothers, one of the most iconic feuds ever in the history of wrestling. So, there were a lot of tag teams, and so Jack was called up to the Carolinas a lot to wrestle team up with me and against Dory and Terry and Dory Sr., and I was called down here to Florida. And that feud, kind of caught on fire because it was four athletes, two Texas Cowboys against two Oklahoma Indians, so and we played it out in Texas and Oklahoma and Louisiana, and it got over because all four of us were athletes. They were being great football players, and us being wrestlers. So it was that rough and tumble wrestling style, the Wild West style, and it worked. And then when Jack won the world title and I won the junior heavyweight title, we decided, let's team up now. We never had that world title. That's when we went to Carolinas after Steamboat Youngblood and started chasing them for the world tag team title. But it was great when we finally did, to team up and get to travel a lot together because, well, like I said, we were in different states. We weren't really, that close together, where we could see each other every day and but our styles were so much alike because we both come from the same background, and so it was easy to mesh, and coming up with the funks, and having their style and our style. I mean, it just was magic in the ring.
Yeah, just some of those tag team matches are really renowned, and I thought it was really interesting too, because I was going to also ask, but you kind of already answered. Just the chemistry that you two had was very impressive, but it just makes perfect sense when you find out that Jack had helped train you, so it really was just impressive, and a lot of, I think, teams kind of look to find that connection, but really just can't find it, and for you two, it seems seamless.
Yeah, it's really hard for a tag team to find it, and I think that's the trouble with I'm not going to go into today's product,
right.
But that's the trouble. They're just put together so quickly, and if they don't click and blend within the first month or two, it's broken up, and these kids don't have time to develop that chemistry with each other and develop a great tag team. A great tag team. Jack and I were lucky. We were, blood brothers. I mean, we were real blood brothers, and I wasn't, not some fake brothers, but we were real brothers. And so we had that bloodline and that mindset, and, we both had the amateur background. We had the exact same coaches, from middle school all the way through high school, all the way through college. We had the exact same coaches. So it was easy to kind of read the mind, because, like I said, we were great at reading body language, and when you have a partner like that you can just look at his body positioning, and even with the funk, we had such great chemistry because we knew where they, except Terry was kind of crazy, but could never really figure him out. But we kind of knew, what direction the match was going and where to go, just simply by body positioning, and that. It once again falls back on being blood brothers and being athletes and having the same coaching coming up all of our careers. Through amateur wrestling and pro, we always had the same coaches, which I think is phenomenal.
Yeah, it's my brother. That's obviously the completely opposite. But my brother and I also, like, when we played baseball, had the same hitting coach, and you could really just, when you start looking side by side, even with something like that, you can really just kind of start to notice how they just start to look the same, and really just fluid motion. So, and I mean, you guys were some of the greatest athletes of that time period as well, especially with just how much you had to work and all of the travel, and just, like, I don't know if you had the same schedule, but I've read stories about, we had the afternoon house show, then we had the evening house show, and then we had to do the same.
The double shots, a good old double shot. I mean, every holidays, brutal as it sounds, the holidays were our best days. Christmas Day, and mostly Thanksgiving Day. Thanksgiving Day is one of the biggest family days of the year for our country, and we would have double shots every Thanksgiving. We'd wrestle at 1 o'clock in the afternoon in Atlanta, Georgia. Get on an airplane and fly our Jacksonville, Florida. Get on an airplane after the match at about 3 o'clock. On the way out to the airport, stop by a fried chicken place, grab you a box of chicken, get on a private plane, and fly to Atlanta and have an evening shot that night. And wrestle that night. That's Thanksgiving Day, and it was the same Christmas. It was brutal, but you made your year on those shots, because those days were traditional wrestling days, and we'd have, in the Omni in Atlanta, we'd have 16,000, 17,000 people, and Jacksonville Coliseum, we'd have 10,000, 12,000 people. The place would be packed, so it was worth your time, and that's when you made your money.
Yeah, right, especially back then in terms of entertainment, there were just such limited options, so...
Yeah, especially on a holiday,
Yeah. That was before a lot of the good Christmas movies were even out, so...
Yeah, exactly, and that was really before, even the NFL and the NBA started showcasing all their feature games on TV, and now you turn on Thanksgiving Day or Christmas Day, you got all the best teams playing, so they can grab that entertainment audience.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think that they really started broadcasting heavily like live games until the 70s. So I mean,
Yeah.
for a long time, local wrestling was.
Was the it.
Yep.
Like people talk about here in Tampa. When I come to Tampa, there were no Tampa Bay Lightning. There was no Tampa Bay Rays. There were no Tampa Bay Buccaneers. All there was spring baseball. And that was just, 6-8 weeks out of the year. So it was wrestling. And we were the entertainment. And we were the athletes of the area. And there's no denying it. From the mayors on down, Ford Championship Wrestling, their athletes were the most sought after guys in town for public appearances and everything.
So that's really kind of interesting because, like you're saying, wrestlers were the celebrities. So how was it? Did you really have a hard time dealing with any of the fame or anything like that? Because obviously it's a pretty big step.
Yeah, and neither one of my brother and I really looked at it as fame. I mean, we tried to blend in. We were just two country boys from Oklahoma. I mean, we just being ourselves. And we never, I mean, you go to a restaurant, it's really nice to get treated special and all that stuff. But we never went to a place looking to be treated like that. We earned the respect to be treated like that, and people here in town kind of, like I said, looked up to the athletes and Florida Championship Wrestling, and they respected us. But it was you had your guys talk about today. Can't walk down an airport. Well, we didn't fly a lot, but we were in more visible in the city than these guys are because they can't be nowadays. But we were treated with respect, and you always had your people come up and want autographs and stuff like that. But you felt thankful for it because you were getting recognized, and it was nice. But to a point, then you'd have your privacy interrupted. But it is what it is. That's the price you pay for when you want to be in the public.
Right, and it was interesting too that you said you didn't actively look out for special treatment or anything. It was just recently I heard a celebrity say, I just can't remember their name, but they said it's kind of like as soon as you're at the point where you don't need free things, everybody wants to give you everything, because they just love you so much and they don't really know how else to express it. But
that's a true statement. And you kind of feel for those people that are doing that because they got nobody in their lives, and so people with passion, you understand that, and you work with them,
right.
So it's tough like that.
Yeah, it just reminds me of I read stories about how whenever Ric Flair was world champ and people would buy him all the shots at a bar or something, he'd throw all of them back. He's like, yeah, and then he would lean to the side and let all of it just spill out of his mouth. He's like, oh, great job. Just
that was the thing. You got so many drinks lined up, you're just tossing them over your shoulder, basically. And it's bad because people are spending their hard-earned money wanting to buy you a drink. But that's the reason you're pretending you're doing it. I mean, if you want to be an asshole, you just let them all sit there, But Rick and everybody else like that, I mean, you want to show your appreciation, so at least you toast them and you take a sip and you deposit the rest of it.
Right. But why is that plant in the corner suddenly dying? Like I don't understand. But so you mentioned a lot about Florida or Championship Wrestling in Florida, but it also became known as FCW. And just a quick story: when I was younger and started to get into wrestling, I was around in third grade. That was around 2007-ish, and everyone was talking about wrestling, and I was so far behind. So I went to a library and just checked out every wrestling book they had. But a lot of them are just literally the history of pro wrestling and things like that. So while everyone's watching John Cena and Batista and everything, I'm reading about the territories and like Vern Gagne and Jim Crockett. It's like, oh guys, look at this picture of Bob Backlund. Isn't he awesome? It's like who? It's just, but turns out, it's finally starting to become useful. But my point is,
well, it is, and I contribute that. It gets blasted a lot. I'm not happy with that transition. This is off the subject, but the WWE Network. I mean, showing all the classics and everything. I think that kind of got the young folks looking at the classic and appreciating some of these things that the guys did. The YouTube clip of Jack and Antone Inoki. I mean, you want to see how a real pro tie-up should be. Google that and Jack Brisco and Antone Inoki locking up. I mean, that shows you the intensity that two great athletes should have when they hit the ring. And how to lock up. I mean, it's spectacular.
Antonio Inoki, obviously one of the greatest legends, did a lot for wrestling in Japan, I believe.
All over the world, but mostly Japan.
Just legendary booker. Dude, that's really interesting too, because I know Inoki had experience kind of. I don't know if it was amateur wrestling, but I know that he had like a little bit of fighting experience, and he was able to do a lot of stiff shots.
He had jiu-jitsu experience.
So that's a really interesting clash of style.
He had some MMA training too, but I'm not talking pre MMA days.
Right.
I'm talking right when I think he represented Japan in the Olympics at Greco-Roman, so he had some Greco-Roman, which is basically jiu-jitsu.
It's about being really far ahead too, because a lot of MMA really on a global platform didn't really start, I think, until the late 90s.
Yeah.
So
it was just basically street fighting. So.
Yeah. For the longest time, it was just people doing wrestling and either wrestling or jiu-jitsu, like you said, that's just
they were tough man contests, is what they were.
Yeah. Oh, exactly. It's really just there's so much interesting stuff that goes into how people develop their wrestling craft. But speaking of when we were talking about Floor Championship Wrestling, so when I was getting into wrestling, my dad would actually talk about how when he grew up, he would watch Floor Championship Wrestling because he grew up in Vero Beach, and we live in Plant City now.
Right.
So he would talk about rave about like watching you and watching Dusty and Haystacks.
Vero Beach is where Hulk Hogan had his first appearance, his first audition.
I was actually going to talk to you about that later, about how you discovered him, but no, I did not know that it was in Vero.
Yeah.
But so, how fondly do you just kind of look back at that time in your career? Because you were, I don't know if you know at the time, but literally wrestling some of the greatest stars of that entire era.
Well, you didn't realize you were wrestling great stars. You just knew you were wrestling great talent at the time.
Right.
And you didn't know, who or what was going to stand the test of time, but the talent assembly that Florida Championship Wrestling put together was really a who's who of professional wrestling. People love coming to Florida. I mean that's obvious to say. Our climate is beautiful, our beaches are gorgeous, and it's a great place to live. So when people come down here, it's hard to get them. And especially when Eddie Graham would bring a certain caliber of talent in. Guys who, like my brother and I, Bob Roop, guys like that who could take care of themselves and take care. He knew if he had a problem, an issue, he had Bob Roop, he had me, he had Jack, he had Billy Robinson. He had some of the guys that could handle their skill, Killer Carl Cox, and Dick Murdoch. He had guys like that that could handle themselves, and the fans appreciated the talent level. But you don't when you're in the ring with somebody and you're both in your 20s, you don't think about looking across the ring, that guy's a legend, or that guy's going to be a legend. What do you think about, man, let's have a good match tonight, let's not kill each other, What is kind of the biggest difference, would you say, of crowds from then to now? Because it's almost like just not even just crowds, but the overall presentation. Crowds back then didn't know as much as crowds know today. Today's crowd are the most educated crowd. I mean, not of the and I'm talking about not your casual TV viewer. I'm talking about somebody that buys a ticket, goes to a room, and sits down and watches the matches at a live event. Those people are so much more educated now and have so much more knowledge. Not only about those people in the ring wrestling then, but most of them have done research and knows about guys like me, knows about guys like my brother, and they know a little bit about it. Those are your fans that I think we're losing a lot of because of the soundbite matches we're having and the quickness of them. And when we were going, we had time to go out and tell people a story and draw them emotionally into the match. And very few of those guys have that opportunity now. And that's a shame, for them to lose that skill of, because like we had your dad emotionally involved with us because he knew that we were going to go out and kick ass. He knew he was going to see a wrestling match when he saw the Brisco brothers.
Right.
And so, nowadays, you're going to be entertained when you see John Cena, but, you don't get that same feeling as your dad did. Well, he's going to see some ass kicking tonight, and, John Cena, he's going to make me laugh, and we're going to have a great time. And I love John Cena. I think John Cena's a great performer, and I think John Cena would have got over back in my day bigger than hell, too, because he's an athlete, and can go. But it's not that same emotion. It's not that same what we called heat. I mean, there's a different type of heat. We had heat, and they got interest now.
Right. One thing that I often make a case for too is I think overexposure has also kind of set in for a lot of people too, and it's just kind of fatigued because they mention all the time about how they never take any breaks off, which is really admirable for all the talent, and obviously everyone respects the talent, but when you're taking no breaks off, you're also continuously producing content, and they're just adding more and more shows. So, and back then, where you are, like we've said, with limited technology and stuff, whenever you go to a crowd.
You're saying that, and this is 2021. In 1983, when cable for TV first came out, at what, 40 years ago?
Yes, sir.
I was hearing this exact same thing.
Really?
Yeah. Cable TV is going to kill the wrestling business. Cable TV is going to run wrestling. And all it did was get bigger and bigger and bigger. I heard the saying, it's overexposed. You watch cable TV and you get wrestling every night of the week, and you could just about, But that was the promoter's biggest fear was cable TV when cable TV started coming out. And we proved them all right when we made the sale events, but that's another story.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a good point, too, because WWE, at this point is, I believe, the most profitable kind of it's been. And that's a lot of it is coming from those TV deals because...
Well, exactly. It's a TV industry. It always. I mean, we had to pay for our TV. We've been when we were at Florida Championship Wrestling, part of the promotion. We paid for our TV. We bartered. We gave them half of the commercial time, and we took half the commercial time. Their half of commercial time, they'd sell, of course, the sponsor, and our part would promote local shows. That was the barter agreement we had. But there was a price to be aired on the TV over in Vero Beach. There was a price to be paid on TV here in Tampa.
Right, and that's really interesting too, because as you just mentioned, you wrestled a bit before this transition to the introduction of a wide use of television for a lot of people. So how much did that affect your industry and the companies that you were working with?
The advent of cable TV.
Yes, and just kind of more broadcast options and stuff.
In places that were established like Florida and the Carolinas, it really didn't hurt that much because they had special talent and a great promotion going on. But your borderline, your Kansas Cities and your Tennessees, some of your Tennessees and some of the western states that didn't have solid promotion. The territories that were solid in the beginning, they were okay, and it was the NWA Alliance, so they could send some of their talent and be on that cable TV out of Atlanta and get their guys over too, like national stars. So, as long as it was being a cooperative type deal, it wasn't hurting. But the established territories, I mean, for the first few years, cable didn't bother. It just wasn't, when Vince and everybody started wanting to go nationally, that's when it started. I mean, there was a time frame, probably a 10-year time frame from when cable hit until the demise came.
And it was really interesting that you brought up Vince McMahon too, because my thought process is nothing shook really the industry more besides maybe the introduction of Hulk Hogan. But I mean, Vince McMahon coming in and getting the territories and stuff too. When you and your brother sold your shares of Georgia Championship Wrestling to Mr. McMahon, did you ever think that the WWE or the WWF, as it is known, would become as gigantic as it has?
Well, I didn't. I mean, I'd be lying to you if I said, I knew it would happen. I didn't think it'd be that big globally, but nationally, we were seeing the same things that Vince Jr. was seeing. My brother and I were, but we had partners that were old school and loyal to the NWA that didn't want to make that move and didn't want to piss off the other promoters. Like I said, they were an alliance, and they worked together on talent and everything. But my brother and I, we'd kind of seen the opportunity. I mean, at the Turner Superstation, when it hit, I mean, TBS hit nationally on cable and opened up, started having this new Superstation, the Superstation. Everybody in the world was tuning to the Superstation, and then Saturday night and Sunday night wrestling on TBS was the #1 rated show. And all of the United States. So we saw that opportunity, but we just had partners that didn't see it or didn't want to risk the friendship and the capital to do something like that. And Vince did.
Yeah, that just really shows the importance of having an innovative mind and. I just kind of
we knew it was going to be big nationally, but I didn't have a clue it was going to be so global.
Right.
And that's all Vince. I mean, that's all to his credit. I mean, to be the branding of WWE globally like that. In the States, because I won't say it's easy because it's not easy, but. It's a limited area, and if you go in, you sell it right, you're going to get it, So and you have the vehicle to get there with TBS, but he started from fresh on and international and built that in, like I said, a global empire.
Yeah, it's incredibly just so widespread, and even with that you can see that with the WrestleMania, it's been held in Canada but mostly in the U.S. But it's a global phenomenon. People fly in really from everywhere.
Yeah, that's one thing that I'm really sad about for Tampa, that we didn't have the Bay Area really hasn't got to experience the true WrestleMania experience, because the damn pandemic has took our international or global fans away. And I do all those fan fest things for WWE
right.
when during WrestleMania week. My favorite thing is sitting at that table and asking people where they're from. They're from all over the friggin' world. I mean, it's amazing. I love sitting there. Where are you from? How many WrestleManias you been to? And I'm shocked. Some people, 20, and they're kids,
Yeah.
but they've been to 15, 20 WrestleManias all over the damn world. But they plan their whole year around that. And because of our coronavirus, I don't think Tampa got to experience a real feeling of a WrestleMania week.
Yeah, that was really just tragic. But one thing I was fairly surprised about was that how it was supposed to be held here last year, but I was surprised that they were able to just bring it right back, because they usually negotiate for that.
You know what happened? I mean, surely you know what happened. This is what they're supposed to be in L.A. in that new arena in L.A. But the pandemic has closed down sports in California, so they couldn't hold it in California, so they moved it back to Tampa.
It's just really funny.
So this is basically L.A.'s WrestleMania.
Yeah, this is just the pandemic's really just had such a huge impact on the industry, but it seems even though the wrestling industry's been hit by it, at least they were able to adapt faster than most, working like empty arena matches and things like that.
Yeah, so, well, I really think WWE just has the most innovative people. I mean, and I don't work for the company anymore, so right. I'm not kissing anybody's ass, but that production crew, that TV department that WWE has, I mean, it's the envy of the
industry
there. It really is, because they're so far ahead, and they're so far ahead on innovation. There's so many creative minds there on the TV side. I got an education from Oklahoma State, but I got a damn PhD working for 36 years at WWE at WWF. I mean, it's amazing, if you take the time. I mean, I learned TV, I learned international promotions, I learned international bookings, I learned, so much from that organization. It was an education working there because of the people that surrounded him with. And as you always hear, you're a college student, you always hear what? Surround yourself with your best people, right?
Yes, sir.
And that's what Vince McMahon did. He surrounded himself with the top people in every form of entertainment, put them all under one roof. And he said, okay, I want you guys to come together. This is the vision. Let's do it. And those damn guys went out and did it. If they couldn't do the job, he got rid of them, got somebody else. But he got a lot of heat for that. But that's a businessman. You get the best people in there. If you think you got the best and he's not the best, you get rid of him and you get the guys in there. That is the best. That's how Vince does business. That's the reason he's so damn successful.
Well, you seem to have been one of the right guys, because you retired in '85 and joined pretty quickly as a road agent, and you were very long tenured. I think one of the more longer tenured workers in the company.
You know what, and people that been around him know this. Vince don't surround himself by yes people, and I disagreed with him, and I verbal arguments with him because I didn't agree with a lot of stuff, and and he didn't agree with me, and the guys that stick around with Vince the longest are the guys who disagree with Vince the most, probably.
It seems the only exception really was Paul Heyman.
Yeah, well, Paul's a kiss ass, but Paul also will argue his point. If he has a really strong point he wants to make, Paul's not going to just take an ass chewing and walk out without saying his piece there. Paul's been around a long time. And like I said, Paul's not an ass kisser, but he's a smart enough man to know what hill to die on.
Right. It's funny you said that, because I was watching his documentary not too long ago, and he said that when talking with Vince McMahon in creative, that was one of his biggest problems, was that he wanted to die on every hill and eventually realized like if he just keeps doing that, because Vince supposedly said to him, I love that you disagree. I love having different perspective. And then Paul's like, well, it turns out after a while it kind of gets annoying,
Well, it does. I mean, they're two different characters, and one has different beliefs, and you can't disagree with the boss in any profession constantly 24/7. He's the boss for a reason.
Oh, definitely. So how much did you really? Obviously, you were kind of gushing about how much you had learned and stuff, but how much did you really enjoy your time in the WWE compared to other promotions? Because with WWE, you're mostly working in a backstage role, so you obviously adapt to that. But I feel like with a more relaxed environment, in terms of not having to go out and wrestle every night, you can kind of settle down a bit and really just kind of live in the moment.
Yeah, I really enjoyed my time W, but probably the easy and probably the most successful time that I had really was when my brother and I went to Carolinas. We turned heel on Ricky Steamboat and Jay Youngblood. And I had my birth of my first son, so I was walking on cloud
Wesley?
for, at West, the first year, so, and plus we were just, red hot in that damn Carolinas and selling out every night everywhere we went. So that was, and it was, working with, Steamboat and Youngblood, it was like a night off. It was, you didn't. You went out and you put in the effort because you wanted to have a great match and you wanted to keep up with those two young dudes. So you worked your ass off, but it wasn't that where you're battling to do something, because the story had been told, and we used one of the simplest things in the world to get heat with, and that was to have an issue about, and that was about the championship belt. That was a belt that Jack and I had never had. We told people that we're going to quit when we win these things, and that was our plan, to win them and quit. Of course, you got to have the rematches and drop them and all that stuff, but that was all part of the program, and the people bought into that, and they knew that, to achieve that goal, we would wrestle any means necessary. So if we got to kick their ass illegally, we'll do it. But that was probably one of the most enjoyable times I ever had. I think it was some of the best work for me personally I ever did, especially with my promos. And I could be a smart-ass little brother, and have a killer big brother there to back me up on everything. So it was easy. It was natural. And so that was probably the most relaxed and non-pressure. Working backstage at WWE was an education that I'll never forget, and I've always appreciated it. But you talk about stress and pressure, brother. It's stress and pressure back there. You're dealing with live time. You're dealing with live people with families and history behind them. So there's a lot of pressure, and there's a lot of pressure. Number one to make sure the talent's happy, and all the talent's not going to be happy all the time. So I was saying, you fool some of the people some of the time, but not all people all the time, or whatever the hell. It's the same with talent. You can make some of the talent happy some of the time, but you can make all the talent happy all the time. But it was a stressful period, and but I loved every minute of it. But it was so damn stressful. It's unbelievable. It's hard to describe what some of the pressures were, and some of them were just minor little things, but they were details that you knew the boss wanted done, so you had to get it done.